Here we are, back together again, friends, for another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Kathryn is an exercise physiologist and a diabetes care specialist. She works with Jenny. She also has type 1 diabetes. She was diagnosed when she was 12. We're going to talk all about her life, get some pretty deep details about some stuff that happened to her when she was younger. And what else here? Oh, she loops and she's delightful. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan. Don't forget, if you're a U.S. resident who has type 1 or is the caregiver of someone with type 1, visit t1dexchange.org/juicebox right now and complete that survey. It will take you 10 minutes to complete the survey, and that effort alone will help to move type 1 diabetes research forward. It will cost you nothing to help. To save 40% off of your entire order at CozyEarth.com, all you have to do is use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. That's JUICEBOX at checkout to save 40% at CozyEarth.com. If you're looking for community around type 1 diabetes, check out the Juicebox Podcast private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod 5, and you can learn more right now at my special link, omnipod.com/juicebox. The episode you're about to enjoy was brought to you by Dexcom. The Dexcom G7, the same CGM that my daughter wears. You can learn more and get started today at my link, dexcom.com/juicebox. I start every day with a delicious drink of AG1. You could as well. Drink AG1.com/juicebox.
Hello, I'm Kathryn Alvarez, and I am an exercise physiologist and diabetes care and education specialist. And I also personally live with type 1 diabetes. I was diagnosed at 12 years old, and I utilize DIY Loop for my personal management right now. But of course, I try everything out. So just recently on Trio and wearing all the things.
Nice. You are how old now?
I am 27.
27. So 15 years with diabetes.
You got it. Yep.
Diagnosed at 12. Any other people with type 1 in your life or your family?
Yeah. So my mom also has diabetes, and it's a crazy thing. You know, you would think like she would be really involved. It would be kind of a story where we enjoyed memories or, you know, like helped each other through diabetes. Unfortunately, she just kind of ignores her personal diabetes diagnosis. She likes to pretend as much as she can that it's not there.
There's no camaraderie between you because you handle things so differently, or because she doesn't talk about it at all?
Right. She really doesn't talk about it. And we never had that shooting the shit in relation to living life with diabetes as I was growing up.
How old was she when she was diagnosed?
She was like 42.
Wait, did you get it first?
No, she did. She was diagnosed during pregnancy, actually.
With you?
My brother.
With your brother. Okay. So she was gestational and then type 1, or just type 1 diagnosis during the pregnancy?
Well, they thought it was gestational, and then they realized post-pregnancy that it was actually a type 1 diagnosis.
Okay. And your brother is older than you?
Yes.
Okay. So she's got diabetes for a few years before you're diagnosed?
Yep.
Okay. She's 42 when she's diagnosed, pregnant. But you're born how much later?
18 months later.
I see. That was the part that threw me off. You didn't say, what do they call that, Irish twins?
Yeah, no, not twins.
No, no. You've never heard Irish? You're so young. So far, for people who know, who don't know, Kathryn held up a cable that had an audio plug on the end of it for headphones. And she's like, I don't recognize this connector. That's how young because it was like a round plug, like everybody listening would remember sticking in the top of their Walkman or their iPod or something like that. Anyway, so Irish twins is a euphemism for, a Catholic person who has babies back to back.
Oh, okay.
Never heard that?
No.
Super interesting.
And I'm Catholic, so who knew?
Well, I know, but now you do.
Yeah, now
I think it's pejorative, in case you're wondering, but I think it's colloquial enough that we can get away with saying it. She had you right after And then 12 years later, when she's 54-ish, you're diagnosed.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Is there any other autoimmune in the family?
There's quite a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, all the autoimmunity in the family.
What else do you have?
Personally, I don't have any other autoimmune diseases. I potentially, I had a test done that potentially rheumatoid arthritis, but at this point, I'm not doing anything to treat it.
Mm-hmm.
So
You had creaky wrists and knees and stuff like that?
I have a very crooked elbow. It looks like my arm is broken. It's kind of weird.
Like a lump on your elbow?
No, it's literally not straight. If I put out my arm as I'm trying to straighten it, it goes off into a curve.
And they think that might be RA?
Yeah.
Interesting. But no pain?
Oh, yeah, lots of pain.
Oh, you're like, yeah. Oh, no. Wait, I didn't mean to say that. No, there's tons of pain.
Yeah.
Where? All your joints or certain ones?
No, it's just in that elbow.
Just in that elbow.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, that sucks. Do they do anything for it? They shoot a cortisol? Nothing.
I got cortisone once and it wasn't worth it. That shot is painful, blood sugar stuff.
Yeah. They say the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Have you ever heard that one?
I've never heard that, but I would agree with it.
All right. You and I are going to have fun. I can tell. Okay. What else? You don't have to tell me the members, but what other, are we looking at thyroid, celiac? What's going on?
Yep.
Yes.
So,
sorry.
Hashimoto's, and actually nobody has celiac, but I have an aunt with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus.
Mostly on your mom's side or your dad's side?
Yeah, all on my mom's side. My dad's side is the picture of health. They just all live these long, healthy lives. Nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong with them.
Yep.
Let's try to understand a little bit what's happening. You're 12 and you're diagnosed, and you've lived your whole life with your mom. Would you say hiding it? Not? Yeah. You just don't see it.
Yeah, don't see it. She doesn't check her blood sugar. She does injections, but not to the point that she should be.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have any context now as an adult, what her care was like as far as outcomes?
Yeah, it was horrible. She now is legally blind, unfortunately. She's had a heart attack, multiple strokes.
Did you become a CDC? Is that right? CDCES? Why did they change it?
Yeah. All the letters.
Did you become that to help yourself or to help other people because you couldn't help your mom? Have you talked to a therapist? Do you know why you did this yet?
For other people. So my mom, when I was diagnosed, I told her this is a good thing. I'm going to be able to help you because I'm going to learn about this and you're going to start to do better. And then I did just kind of figure it out since I was 12. I always did all my own management. Nobody ever helped me growing up. And then why I became a CDCS was actually because of my boss. He hates when I say this, but it's the truth. I read Think Like a Pancreas in undergrad and just answered so many questions that I always had. Mm-hmm. And I was like, everyone needs to know this information. Nobody ever told me this stuff. I've had all these questions, couldn't find the answer until I read the book. So that's when I decided I want to be just like him and meet with as many people as I can to help educate them and provide these answers to why things are the way they are.
So you, in college, read Gary's book?
Yep.
And then became a CDE back then.
Well, it was CDCES. Yeah, remember.
You just did this.
Yes. It was 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, so wait, when did you take when did you become a CDCES?
2 years ago.
Okay. So did you work for Gary prior to that?
Yep. Yeah, I got my hours and everything working with Gary.
Oh, that's awesome. No kidding. Yeah. When you told your mom, 12-year-old you, Mommy, I'm going to figure this all out and we're both going to be okay.
Uh-huh.
And then you figured it out. She is like, never mind.
Well, she's come a long way. She finally wears a CGM, which is huge. And she'll talk to me about, some blood sugar stuff, why things happen the way they do. But
you haven't put her on loop, for example.
No, not on loop. She, with the vision. And so I live in Florida. She's in Pennsylvania. And my dad has to like change her CGMs and stuff. It just would be dangerous for her to be on a pump because she wouldn't change it out.
So do you have any hindsight on why she ignored everything so much?
I guess it's kind of her personality. You know, she did the same with kind of other health related things. I think pretending it's not there is her coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Did she understand the ramifications of ignoring it? Or did she just think it wasn't going to happen to her? Do you have any idea what her expectation was when she wasn't paying attention to it? My daughter is 20 years old. I can't even believe it. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 2, and she put her first insulin pump on when she was 4. That insulin pump was an Omnipod, and it's been an Omnipod every day since then. That's 16 straight years of wearing Omnipod. It's been a friend to us, and I believe it could be a friend to you. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Whether you get the Omnipod DASH or the automation that's available with the Omnipod 5, you are going to enjoy tubeless insulin pumping. You're going to be able to jump into a shower or a pool or a bathtub without taking off your pump. That's right, you will not have to disconnect to bathe with an Omnipod. You also won't have to disconnect to play a sport or to do anything where a regular tube pump has to come off. Arden has been wearing an Omnipod for 16 years. She knows other people that wear different pumps, and she has never once asked the question, should I be trying a different pump? Never once. Omnipod.com/juicebox. Get a pump that you'll be happy with forever.
Yeah, I think she was so scared of it happening that it put her in a point of not even being able to deal with it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that like rationally it doesn't, but you know, kind of going through it, I think she just like didn't want it to happen so bad that she made it happen.
I'm just not going to look, and then if I don't look in the closet, the guy with the axe won't jump out.
Exactly.
That kind of feeling. Oh, okay. All right. Exercise physiology. That's what you got out of college, right?
Yep.
Okay. Then you go find Gary. Sounds like you lived in Pennsylvania for a while. Gary's in Pennsylvania. You go find Gary. You get a job. What are you doing for him at that point?
I was a little intern. I was mostly running the social media, and then I was also helping get people scheduled and sitting in on a lot of appointments.
Okay. So through sitting in on the appointments, do you gather your hours that way?
Yes. And then I also so I had to also teach people in getting those hours as well. So I did like exercise programming. We did a class at a local hospital. So I was able to actually help teach that class.
Okay. So then you gather enough hours to take the test. Is that how it works?
Yep.
You think the podcast counts as hours? It doesn't. But I've never looked into it, but I'm assuming it doesn't.
I don't know. There's this like unique pathway. So like, I think you can like run your own business and like, as long as a diabetes education, I don't know. If you can make your argument, I feel like anything's possible.
It's interesting. I don't want to be a CDE because they changed the CDCES, which did no one say it out loud before they changed it? It's hard to say. Right? It's like your brain really gets lost in it. You're like CDCC. Wait, what?
Nobody that's not a CDCES can say CDCES. That's just
no. Also, it doesn't flow. Like there's no rhythmic loveliness to it. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. CDE, bang, bang, bang. Lovely. Yeah. Just like that. Yeah. Everyone knew what you meant. Nah, it's okay. Fix.
Yeah. No, I just say I'm a diabetes educator.
Yeah. You know, they'd change it back if they could. I bet there's four people in a room. There's like, what do we do there?
Yeah. I feel like JDRF is probably feeling the same way.
Oh, you think so? We're breakthrough T1D.
Yeah.
Great.
It's just not taken. Everyone's still saying JDRF.
Just floats. It floats off the tongue. Hard to change the name. It's you know, you can't even change like the color in Facebook. People have a stroke. So
exactly. People don't like that change.
I don't mean to go back to your mom for a second.
Yeah, do it.
But as she's having poor outcomes and you're diagnosed, and she's not interested in helping you, do you have like a personal separation from her that happened over that? Like, did your relationship go differently?
No, it was more like I wanted to take it all on. I didn't want anyone else to be involved. So I remember the first week, like she was doing my shots for me. Very faintly remember that. But I remember the way she did it was painful. And then our good friend was a dentist. And he did it, and he just kind of jabbed it into me. Mm-hmm. And I realized, like, all right, well, the way she does it is just slow and painful and traumatizing. So, I mean, I think that if she had to, she would have done it for me. I think I just realized very quickly that I would be happier if I did it myself.
Was it I'd be happier if I was in control, or was it like she doesn't seem to know what she's doing?
I don't know. I guess it was like a combination. Like the way she did it was painful, more painful than what I realized it had to be.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, at 12, you don't want to stand out. You're trying to do everything you can to fit in.
Yeah.
If I had control over it, it's a lot easier for me to be able to.
You can manipulate how people see you if you're in control of everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it wasn't you cognitively saying, like, I don't think the lady knows what she's doing right now.
Yeah, right.
What age do you realize that that's true?
Probably 12.
Okay, same year. Like you would handle a meal differently than she would. She'd have problems afterwards. You wouldn't, like that kind of stuff.
Right. And, you know, I wasn't perfect either, but like
Sure.
I was this crazy 12-year-old. I had my little carb book. I looked everything up. I wrote everything down and, you know, figured out how to make things work.
Plus, you're right in that age when kids start thinking like, I think Dummy and what's her name over there don't know what's going on. Like that, which is a thing that happens. Wait, do you have any kids?
Not yet.
No. You get one day and then wait like 10, 15 years and then it'll look at you one day and go, I think you're an idiot. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. None of us really know what the heck we're doing. Yeah.
Then you have to make that decision, by the way. Do you double down on pretending your way through life, or do you just look and go, look, kid, I got to be honest with you. There are days I'm stunned we have a roof over our heads. I do not know what's going on. I'm trying my hardest. You're working with Gary. You're doing your thing. You get your hours. Then you have to go take a test, right? Like an actual.
Yep.
Yeah. How many times do you have to take it to win?
Just once.
Look at you. Show off.
Yeah.
All right. And so now you become a newly minted diabetes educator and you start working for Gary in like you do what Jenny does, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So you see patients virtually.
Yeah. And Jenny and Gary they mentored me through it. And Alicia, in addition. Mm-hmm. I sat in, spent so much time with them, just learning.
Talk about that a little bit. Like when you sit in a room, just use Jenny as an example because people know her, although I know a lot of great things about Alicia. But like, there's Jenny. She's got a way she talks to people. What is it you learn? Like, is it how she asks questions to get to what's going on? Is it like, what do you take from it that you think, okay, that's the piece of Jenny that I'm going to move into who I am?
Well, Jenny just has an incredible way of connecting with people. And I think she's very empathetic and just really good at forming relationships with people. So I think just from Jenny, one of the biggest things that I took away was I always want people to feel that they're incredibly cared for. Mm-hmm. Because that's definitely what Jenny gives. Like she makes everyone feel like they are important and she's there for them and she wants to see them succeed. As
much as I think that comes across when I'm recording with her, mm-hmm. I've had private conversations with her and her desire to be helpful to people is so much stronger and deeper than you would even imagine.
Right.
Yeah. She's really driven
to
be valuable to other people with diabetes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a very special person.
I know everyone's different, but when you meet a new person, how long, just these are generalized numbers, but how long does it take you before you go, oh, I know what's going on here? Do people fit into boxes? Like how do you virtually help somebody? You're not with them. Like you and I talked before we started, and I said, I've been talking to somebody online and the person's just lost. And I'm basically right now just asking them a lot of questions. I'm half trying to see if I can figure out what's going on from the questions. And I'm half hoping that the questions make them think of something that they haven't considered yet. But at what point do you think, oh, I know which way to take this, or I know how to attack this problem? And how often does that actually even work? Dexcom G7 offers an easier way to manage diabetes without finger sticks. It is a simple CGM system that delivers real-time glucose numbers to your smartphone, your smartwatch, and it effortlessly allows you to see your glucose levels and where they're headed. My daughter is wearing a Dexcom G7 right now, and I can't recommend it enough. Whether you have commercial insurance, Medicare coverage, or no CGM coverage at all, Dexcom can help you. Go to my link, dexcom.com/juicebox, and look for that button that says get a free benefits check. That'll get you going with Dexcom. When you're there, check out the Dexcom Clarity app or the follow. Did you know that people can follow your Dexcom? Up to 10 people can follow you. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com. And when you use my link to learn about Dexcom, you're supporting the podcast. Before AG1, I didn't have a comprehensive idea about how to support my gut health. But now that I drink AG1, I do. My goals for 2025 are simple. Stay on this path. Drink AG1 every morning and keep things moving. And I mean that figuratively and literally in the right direction. So this year, try AG1 for yourself. It's the perfect time to start a new healthy habit. And that's why I've been partnering with AG1 for so long. AG1 is offering new subscribers a free $76. Oh, what is this? Offering new subscribers a free $76 gift when you sign up. Get out of here. You're going to get a welcome kit, a bottle of D3K2, and 5 free travel packs in your first box. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/juicebox for more information. Check it out.
Well, before we even meet with people, we have them fill out a very intensive assessment packet. So oftentimes, just from that alone, you can identify some of the important points for education, just from all the questions that are asked in there. You know, we're asking things like for their data, so we can look at all of their patterns and blood sugars and insulin delivery. We're asking them about like the glycemic index and asking them to explain these different things to us to see, what their starting point knowledge basis is. That's really helpful. I would say we really just start with like the educational points. In conversation, you just eventually are identifying these things that are coming up. And we have their blood work and everything as well. So
if there's other outliers like untreated thyroid or something like that, you can see that as well.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And so then how much of the conversation that you have with them is about continuing to mine information, and how much of it is just you like tearing the whole thing down, starting over at basics and building them back up again?
Yeah, it really depends from, the person. Everyone is kind of coming in at a different point. So some people, and they come in and they know their stuff. Like they have done so much self-education, just kind of clarifying pieces and then really teaching some of them just like that. How do you analyze your data and know what adjustments need to be made, or helping them pick like what system might work better for them based on their goals. Where other people, they need like, you got to cover every educational piece with them because they're kind of starting from a spot of.
And it doesn't matter how long they've had diabetes, right? You can see a person who's like, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing. I've only been doing this for 6 months, a year, but you could meet somebody who's been doing it for 10 or 15 years and they could be in the same position.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of times what happens is these people that have been living with it for so stinking long, I mean, they get a little burnt out and they don't follow up with the latest stuff anymore. Where these people that were just diagnosed, especially if they have a little one, like they just pour themselves into everything that they can find.
Yeah. No, I know. There's this thing like that I'm always trying to figure out, like at what point that a person's had type 1 for a really long time, do they just end up going like, I don't know, like I can't impact this. It is what it is. I'm just going to live as long as I can. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and what happened to them that got them so off kilter? Like, is it as simple as someone didn't explain basics to them and therefore they're having all these responses to insulin and food that they can't make sense of? And then they just get to that point where they're like, oh, I guess this is what this is. Or is it a burnout thing where you're just like, I can't put any more effort into this? Or do you get burned out because you're putting so much effort in, but you're putting it in the wrong places because you don't know any better, and that's what causes burnout? Does that all make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think everyone's reason for getting to the point of burnout is different. I think some people are just doing too much and having like their life revolves around diabetes. Some people, just the fact that they have to do so many extra things every single day just gets to a point of it just not feeling fair. And they don't want to do it anymore. So I definitely think it comes from different places.
Mm-hmm. I always find it the saddest when a doctor misreads that, when someone's is putting in a bunch of effort, but they're learning so quickly and having such great, these great outcomes, and they're really putting all the pieces together. And just as it starts to make sense to them, by the way, just as they get to the point where I think they're actually not going to have to put as much effort into it day to day because they really kind of got it down a little bit, a doctor will sometimes step in and say, oh, you're going to make yourself crazy. You got to stop. I want to see your A1C go up next time.
Yeah.
That really beats people up when that happens too.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it almost makes some people like some distrust, I guess, in the endo because they feel like, they're doing so well. And the endo's like, well, now you're doing too good.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said similar things before. If you're not sleeping because you're just panicking about your kid all the time and you're dosing them every 5 minutes because you're scared when their blood sugar gets to 120 that they're going to die. I mean, those are unrealistic. It's
a different problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is times where, I mean, that commentary is true. They are over obsessing over diabetes. And I mean, it is true that will likely lead to burnout or a heart attack for that parent.
From not sleeping.
They're just in a constant state of stress.
Yeah. I'm always hopeful that they can transcend that moment and that, after some time of, like you said, bolusing a 120 blood sugar, like that they can start saying, oh, you know what, if I would have done this in the past, then we wouldn't have got to this 120. Or like same thing with a low, like, if you're always stopping lows, you can start looking back at your meal and saying, maybe if I would have used the insulin differently at the meal, we wouldn't be low here. Mm-hmm. But I do take your point, and I do believe from what I've seen is that as many people as can transcend that moment and move forward, making better decisions earlier, stopping problems from happening more frequently. There's also the same number of people probably who get stuck in that moment and are treating that number forever and ever and ever until, like you said, they can't sleep anymore and they go crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, in some ways, the technology is almost hurtful because it's so in our face. So like we almost feel like we should always be responding. We see it. And so naturally we want to do something, but
so interesting how the different personalities react differently. Like there's some people who like, oh, thank God this thing beeped. I can do something about it. Mm-hmm. A different person would be like, this thing keeps beeping. I hate this and I don't want this to happen anymore. There's so many different variables about who you might be in this scenario. Like that's why I think seeing a person one-on-one should be helpful if you can get somebody to actually focus on you. So why is Jenny, like when somebody basically pays a concierge person to help them, what's the difference between that and a doctor's appointment? Because people want to say it's time. And I know the time's limited with a doctor, but do you not think it's more than that? I think it's more than just the time doctors have to give.
I think a big difference is just the compassion of it. All of us personally, we live it, we experience it, and we want everyone to thrive. Like we don't want anyone to be held back. We want to see people happy and healthy. Just that point of living with it. I think we're so much more motivated to stay up to date on all the latest technology and
to ask bigger picture questions too.
Right.
I mean, I'm in a weird position, whereas I don't normally speak to a person like face to face. You said something really kind before we started recording about like, you talk to a lot of people who listen to the podcast and they like the podcast. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it helps them. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you help people without knowing any of their details? That's why I think over and over again, I stick to the basics. I think that has the best chance of helping the most people. Like, I don't think it's going to help everybody. I don't think everybody's going to have the same response. For every person who's like, oh my God, this saved my life, I'm sure there's somebody who's like, I listened to what you said and I got to be honest with you, my life's no different. Mm-hmm. I know that that's the case, but it's all I have, right? Like it's It's the best that I can do. I just said, look, like, here are the things that I figured out on my own that seem to help my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they help you too. Or maybe you can cherry pick from it and take some of the stuff that helps or doesn't help. You know, it isn't until like I meet Jenny and we start talking to each other. Like, my first thought about Jenny when she came on the podcast the first time is, wow, she and I think about diabetes so similarly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it really is like, it's awesome. Like, you know, like, it's crazy how like lockstep we are. Like, when somebody says something, our responses are so similar. I realized later, because I don't really know at that point, this is going to sound crazy to people, but I've never read Gary's book. And I think I've only met Gary one time, and it was in passing where someone was like, Scott, that's Gary. He wrote Think Like a Pancreas. And I go, hey, how are you? And someone goes, Scott writes a blog. And then I think we walked past each other. I've spoken to him on the phone once. And that was only more recently, like in the last 6 months. And that was maybe for 15 minutes and had nothing to do with diabetes.
Yeah.
So I'd never read his book. I don't know any of the like conclusions he's come to or the things he talks about. But then when I meet Jenny and I realize Jenny works for him, she's probably working off of like some ideas that he, at the very least, like that he's, you know, talked about. And I thought, it's crazy. That book and this podcast are incredibly similar to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then I meet one time I speak with Dr. Ponder, and he starts talking about how he thinks about diabetes. And I think, but that's how I think about it. And then you realize like the people who listen to Dr. Ponder have a lot of success. And the people that read Gary's book seem to have a lot of success. And the people who listen to the podcast seem to have a lot of success. Overwhelmingly, not everybody. And you go, oh, there's got to be building blocks, basics within this that lead a lot of people to an understanding that helps them continue on and to have better outcomes. And it's interesting, isn't it, that three people saw it in their lives differently, like a doctor and, you know, I mean, who has type 1, Gary, who has type 1, and myself, who like, you know, just raised somebody with it, was just looking at it from an outsider's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, we all came up with similar like touch points.
Right.
It's really interesting. You know what I mean? Anyway, I don't know why I said all that other than to say, like, I think
well, I mean, it's like the fundamentals. You just, you know, you find these fundamental things and
yeah,
you kind of take off with it.
Thank you. That's my point. My point is that those fundamentals are so important to learn, and then to try to adapt them and apply them is the part that I can't be helpful with. A book's not going to help you with. Like, none of that's going to help you. Like, you learn this part and then you say, okay, how does that apply to what I just ate, how I just ran around, how I live my life, how blood sugars act in me, like all that other stuff. It's not like, they're not hard and fast rules that if everybody just does them, it's just all going to work out great every time. It's not that. How long have you been doing this now, where you're actually sitting down one-on-one with a person trying to help them figure out the problems they're having? How long have you been doing that? A few years?
Yeah, I guess I'm at like 5 years now.
Okay. It's a fairly long time. If I asked you, what are the fundamentals? What are they from your perspective?
Well, a big one is it really depends on what system they're using in a way too, but basal testing is huge. Knowing what we need, just kind of in a steady state from a background insulin standpoint, and how to do that type of testing, how to test your insulin to carb ratio, what factors in lifestyle are important to note, and because they're going to have an impact. So just kind of like, you know, learning about stress impact and sick day management, growth hormone, those kinds of things that you see a huge impact on blood sugar with.
When you see people struggle, is there a generalization to make? Like, if I said to you, finish this sentence, most people struggle with, what pops into your head?
It's definitely different, but most people struggle. It really depends on the population.
Yeah.
I think most parents struggle with the unpredictableness of their child, and really that growth hormone is a big one. Where adults, they struggle with food. Food is a huge thing.
Yeah. Consistency with bolusing.
Yeah, that timing of the dose. And then, protein fat really gets people. It's a big one.
Yeah. No, I know. Until we started talking about that on the podcast, I didn't even realize how many people were like, wait, what?
Right.
Yeah. They're like,
carb,
too?
carb.
Yeah. They're just counting carbs, right? And they're not really thinking about for me, making the podcast over the years, like the impact that timing of digestion has on diabetes, I mean, now seems like an obvious thing to me, but back then, like when I first started, I didn't think about it. And it wasn't, it's interesting how it all builds, like, right? Like until someone said, you know, fat slows down digestion, I was like, wait, and then the carbs are in there impacting longer, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's what happens with pizza. Yeah. And then you start applying it to other things in your life. You're like, oh my God. And then it just all starts to come together. You're like, oh, that's what happened when I had a cheeseburger and
exactly
ice cream. Like, and it really wasn't until like one time, I think when Jenny like said to me, like, you know, pizza isn't pizza. It's bread and sauce and cheese. And like, it's 4 things, you know, and maybe there's meat on it too. Like there's a protein hit, like, and what about more cheese or less cheese? And like, no one looks at their pizza and says, oh, that's a thick cheese. My spike is going to come later. You know what I mean? Or like, this is a hand-tossed Neapolitan pizza that just has a couple of pieces of mozzarella put over it. Like, this isn't going to hit me as hard. And it's, but now I think about all of that when I look at food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, like when people are so stuck counting carbs, like cheese in your mind is like free. You're like, ooh, you know, and then the extent that you get normally when you learn more is somebody goes, cheese isn't free.
It's not free.
Yeah. But then it's not followed up with more conversation. It's just,
right.
You know, and you're like, well, what do you mean? I flipped the package over. It says 0.
No such thing as free.
Right. Everything's impacting something somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Tell people a little bit about like you do something, I don't know if you call it part-time or you do it like in addition to your job, but tell people the other thing you do.
Yeah. And I think that this has really helped me clinically because I've experienced, I can't say what it's like to be a parent of a person with type 1 diabetes, but much more firsthand experience. So what I do is I also help a family where their little guy has type 1 diabetes. I moved from Pennsylvania to Florida 2 years ago, and he's 5 now. And I've traveled all over the world with them. And I spend most weekdays about 2 hours with them. But I also have sleepovers sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Him as well. So I've just kind of learned for a very little one how different everything is. Trying to be a pancreas for an ever-changing little human being that you never know what they're going to do next, and just the uniqueness and the challenges that comes with that.
And so you think that just being around him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, being around this little boy and seeing all the different impacts. Like, do you feel yourself leveling up constantly with diabetes?
Yeah, I mean, just professionally in this experience, it made a huge difference. Mm-hmm. I meet with most of the super little ones now that come to integrated diabetes services because I have that firsthand experience.
Yeah. It's a different world, isn't it? When you're trying to measure quarters of units in syringes and, you know, they eat and they jump up and run around all of a sudden and you're like, ah.
We're like, I wasn't expecting that activity.
Yeah. I didn't know that was going to happen.
And the growth hormone is wild. I mean, like just what they need sometimes when they first fall asleep is just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So
growth, menstruation, pregnancy. Those are the 3 that are just like, boom. You know,
oh, crap.
I would maybe add to the end of that list, like the unexpected nature of how some anaerobic exercise impacts people.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, just competitive sports, like
the adrenaline,
that's tough to navigate, especially like when you have these different types of activity, you need a different strategy for practice versus game day. And
no, that's why I like the story that I ended up eventually telling on the podcast that I think has been the most valuable for people, because I hear them talk about it over and over again, is the idea of bolusing for a juice box if you think there's going to be adrenaline.
Uh-huh.
And so, you know, I don't know if you've heard me say this, please stop me. But
I have, so go for it.
Okay. So Arden is like, I don't know, young at the time, and she's playing this like in this little Sunday basketball league.
Uh-huh.
And she'll show up, you know, it's always 9 a.m. These games, they drag your ass out of bed. Like, you know what I mean? Like you go over to the local school, to the gymnasium, bunch of little girls play this other bunch of little girls. And Arden has had diabetes at that point for a while, but still it's like 6 years. And the truth is we're using a pump and a CGM at that point, but it's an earlier version of the CGM. So it's kind of okay. Like you're still like hoping that the Bluetooth signal's bouncing around on the metal deck ceiling of the gym and makes it back to the receiver, like that kind of stuff, which by the way, used to actually work. Like you could be in a room with a metal ceiling and the receiver would work farther away than it would be if you weren't in a room with them. Anyway, so we'd get to these games and some days her blood sugar would jump like into the mid 200s. And then some days it wouldn't. And so one game it would, the next week it wouldn't, back and forth. And I was like, what is happening? And my wife and I are sitting there talking. And all I'm saying is like, we can't let her blood sugar keep going up to 250. Like we can't do that. And my wife's like, but last week it didn't. So what do we do? And I just like blurted out, I'm going to bolus for a juice box right before the game. And she's like, what? And I said, well, if this adrenaline, that seems to be what it is, adrenaline, right? Like something's hitting her. And we actually eventually figured out where the adrenaline would come from and not come from, which is kind of funny. But I was like, here's the insulin. If the adrenaline pops off, then the insulin will cut off the adrenaline rise. Now, she would still need food after the game. Like it was still too much, but at least it got in the way of the adrenaline, right?
Yeah, that sensitivity eventually kicks in.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the big thing is trying to figure out, well, how much insulin do you need to combat adrenaline rise?
Yeah. So I still don't know how much was right, but what I knew was if the adrenaline didn't come, I had basically just pre-bolused a juice box. So if I didn't see the spike, at some point, 5 or 10 minutes into the game, I'd be like, here, real quick, drink this juice to combat the insulin that we put in.
Right.
And then after that game, she wouldn't need as much food. She'd still need some, but not as much as if the insulin was in there to battle the adrenaline. Now, listen, this is very rudimentary, but it worked and it got us through it.
Yeah. So you found your way. And this is one of the things I learned from Think Like a Pancreas. And I still use it to this day as like the starting point. But of course, everyone's different. So you got to adapt every starting point. We say, okay, so her blood sugar usually went to 250. So we're going to give a correction, assuming that's where she's going to go. But because you are physically active, you're still going to be more sensitive to that insulin. So you would do 50% less of what you would typically need to correct a blood sugar of 250 for the starting point, and then kind of go from there.
Well, what we figured out is that when she got to the game, like Arden was really competitive and she'd assess the girls on the other side. I don't even think she knew she was doing it, but if she thought the game was going to be hard and that they would put up a fight, then she'd get this spike. And I usually say like, if it looked like there were like 5 little marshmallows on the other side, she'd be like, oh, we're going to kill these girls. And she never got really excited about it.
No problem. Yeah.
Listen, again, it's a rudimentary way to take care of it. We got through it, everything, etc. But telling the story allowed people to realize like, oh, adrenaline does that. And insulin will combat adrenaline, except later the adrenaline disappears and the insulin's still there. And then you have a problem. But I can still workshop that problem and try to get through it. And then eventually one day I adapted the idea when a person said to me, it seems like I need more insulin, but I don't know how much more to give at this meal, because we're not huge carb counters, like more like, hey, I think this meal takes about this much kind of vibe. People would say like, all right, I agree. Like, it looks like I need more at this meal, but if I've counted the carbs correctly, but I still need more, how do I make the leap of giving myself more? Like, it seems really scary to people to do just another unit or something like that. And so I adapted the thing from the basketball and I said, why don't you bolus for the food that you've counted plus a juice box? And then if it's too much, you can use the juice box to combat it. And if it's not too much, well, now you know that this much insulin plus this led us to this outcome. Do I need more or less?
Right. And that's a cute way. I mean, and people think like, yeah, a juice box. You're right. It's not so scary.
Doesn't seem too scary, etc. And that thing, when I go out into the audience and I say, hey, because I've done this recently, I was like, look, over these 10 years, I've said so many like colloquial things that people will like parrot back to me. Can you make a list of them for me? Because I've lost track of all of them, And one of them that came back overwhelmingly was bolus for a juice box if you don't know how much more insulin to try. As crazy it is the slow progression of that story over years led people to be able to be a little more aggressive at their meals to see if maybe a little more insulin would be valuable for them. Crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I like it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like the same thing with like when people are like, I don't know how to pre-bolus for a little kid. They never eat the same thing.
Right. You never know what they're going to eat.
And I just said one day, I was like, well, is there a minimum amount that you know they'll eat? It just pre-bolus that much. And then as you see it go in, do the rest, you know, if more goes in. Mm-hmm. And that ended up being helpful for people because the minute they see a pre-bolus actually work at a meal, it opens up a lot of other ideas for them.
Right. And even a percentage of a pre-bolus is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it's like little things like that come from conversations. And so you're getting to see those things with this little boy. Plus you have type 1. You actually have a rich layering of perspectives because you watched your mom. I don't want to say she didn't take it seriously, but she wasn't putting the effort in where it needed to be put. Right. And then you figured it out for yourself. And now you're getting to watch a little kid live with it. Like, how long do you think you're going to be like a Zen master with all this?
You know, something else that's super crazy too that we haven't even talked about is my aunt. She has type 3C. So she had her whole pancreas was removed because she had pancreatic cancer.
Okay.
So I get that too.
Your mom's sister?
Yes.
Interesting. That can't be coincidental, right? The pancreatic cancer and the diabetes.
Well, right. I'm always in all of us, my mom, my aunt, and myself, it's called the BRCA2 gene. So it puts us at like really high risk for breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer. So my aunt, of course, was very unlucky and wound up with all the cancer.
Okay.
So
what's your mom's background? What's her family?
Her family, well, actually, Mom, we got a DNA test and found out that we're Ashkenazi Jew. So that's where that.
Everybody is. Everybody gets like a 1%, I believe. Yeah. Not everybody, but a lot of people.
Well, a little bit higher percent, which puts you at high risk for this BRCA2 gene.
Really? No kidding. Yeah. That's what does it right there. But are you guys like Irish, English?
Yeah, Irish and Norwegian.
I sometimes talk about my friend Mike, who's passed. I don't know if I've ever like added this layer of detail about his life, but he was diagnosed type 1 when we were in high school, and his mom eventually died of pancreatic cancer. So I don't know. And they're Irish, and like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how many different times you got to hear people's stories where you're like, this seems like I hear about this.
Seems like a pattern.
Yeah, a little bit of a pattern here somewhere. Interesting. Are your mom and your aunt similar in their personalities, or did your aunt attack? No, so your aunt took over and did what you needed to do. Yeah,
my aunt, we have similar personalities. She definitely is, but it's tough because she has a whole extra layer. Like, we don't even realize, like, I never really appreciated the small things that my pancreas does do.
Digestive enzymes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's just her trying to eat is, it's quite complicated.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a researcher. I'm not anything, but like I hear a lot of people's conversations, and I so often when I see people with type 1, you know, they always, oh, my stomach hurts, or after I eat or something like that. And I was like, why does no one ever tell you, hey, your pancreas does more than just this? And, you know, a lot of you seem to have trouble digesting food. And then they'll tell you immediately that the doctor will jump to, well, you have gastroparesis then. Mm-hmm. And what if just maybe you just don't have enough digestive enzymes? And you could buy them over the counter, by the way. And they're not particularly expensive and they work really well. Like, why is that not talked about? I assume it's not talked about because they don't know, the doctors.
Right. Yeah. I always wonder that same thing, you know, kind of talking about why don't they mention the alpha cells? Yeah, I think it's just that. I know we talked a little bit about their time constraint. Maybe that's it, but.
Yeah, but how many times does somebody have to tell you my stomach hurts and they have type 1 before you go, maybe I should say this out loud?
The amount of people that don't even get checked for celiac antibodies is just shocking.
Right. Yeah. Or how about how many people's TSHs rise and the doctor's like, that's fine. We're not going to do anything about that.
Oh, right. Yeah. As long as they're not looking for huge bumps every time. And as long as it falls within the range, they're not going to see it.
I love when a person's like, my hair's falling out, I'm cold all the time, and I can't sleep, and I'm exhausted, and my TSH is 4, and the doctor's like, it's not that. And I have type 1 diabetes, and my brother's got celiac, and my sister's got a bump on her elbow. we're riddled with autoimmune issues. They're like, nah, it's probably not that though.
It's probably your diabetes, honestly.
Yeah. Have you tried cutting out flour? My thyroid's not, or I'm making it, my body's not picking it up correctly. Like, help me. It leads me to ask you, have you helped anybody yet who's been had a GLP added? And what have you seen with that?
Yeah. There's definitely has increased in popularity, especially with these people in the DIY community doing it with unannounced meals. I've used it myself as well, but I'm not now because I love to share too much information, but I'm trying to conceive, so I can't take it during that time. But it's truly incredible just helping with that meal time and the fact that we are lacking in it really replaces a lot of what we're lacking in. So it can make a huge difference. Have
you seen anybody use it and it just didn't change anything for them with their blood sugars?
Well, what's more common is it did help them, but it negatively impacted them in many other ways that it wasn't worth it.
Okay, so someone's like, listen, I have diarrhea now, but my blood sugar's better. I'm going to choose not having diarrhea, something like that.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
But you haven't seen anybody just take it and it just flatly has not impacted their blood sugar.
I mean, you see people where it doesn't impact them from a weight standpoint, but no, from a blood sugar standpoint, I have not seen that. I'm sure I will,
No, I'm just trying to decide, like, I'm not in charge of anything, but I'm trying to figure out, like, why did a guy come on the podcast who was, I think he was, 58, right? And he had diabetes for like 6 years. He was probably LADA. It was probably a really slow onset. He was overweight. They put him on GIP, and he loses a bunch of weight, but more importantly, like, is literally not taking any insulin now. And he has excursions at meals. They go up 180 or so. They come back. He's clearly going to need insulin at some point, but his beta cells like had functionality. He was using a lot of insulin, like as much as would make you, I mean, he was comfortable calling himself a type 1. So was his doctor. He was using that much insulin. Right. And now suddenly he's not using any. What did that GLP do to free those beta cells up to handle the load more or less? Like, do you know what I mean? And like, is there a world where his beta cells just weren't far enough along so they were able to be helped like with a crutch? And is there going to be a world where somebody's beta cells are so wiped out that even if you add that crutch, you're not going to see a benefit? Like, that's what I'm wondering.
Right. And I think that would be the case, because if you think about people in the honeymoon phase in general, I mean, there is times where people don't need to initiate insulin right away. They can supplement in some vitamin D and with physical activity. They get away with not having to take insulin for some time.
And I wonder how much of that is inflammation, because
exactly, I
go back to like back before the podcast where there was this one researcher who was trying, I don't remember any of the details about this, but other than to say this one researcher was saying out loud, I don't think the beta cells are dead. I think they're frozen. They're inflamed to the point where they can't function. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And then that's like kind of the last time you thought about it again, right? Like it was back around when people were talking about stem cells a lot. And now you listen to people talk about GLP medications. Like, so I was just listening to a Dr. Drucker, who's like kind of one of the pioneers of GLP. And I was listening to like a 2-year-old grand rounds he was doing at a hospital recently. He's just talking about how the inflammation impact from GLP is almost like instantaneous when you put it in. Like they can see it impact your inflammation markers almost immediately after it's put in your body. And like, I'm like, all that, like, wait till we figure out all this. But still, when they talk about it, like the researchers, I don't mean people who are like, coming along trying to find other research and uses for it. I'm talking about the people who like pioneered this thing. They still say, we don't actually know how it works.
Yeah, like we have no idea what the heck is going on.
Yeah, which is not uncommon in man-made medication. But to hear them say like, yeah, you lose weight, like we don't understand why.
Yeah. Like, well, and not everyone does, though. There's also some research. There's like a blood work that you can do. I wrote an article about it. I wish I remembered it more, like in a better way to explain it. But they can test something and see, like, predict if they would be a responder.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So there's a blood test you can do to tell you if you're going to respond favorably to GLP?
Right. Yes.
Huh.
Yeah, I wrote a little article on it. So yeah, I know it's out there somewhere.
Is it a genetic test?
I couldn't tell you. I write so many different things. I wish I had a better memory, but
No, don't, please. Again, these are how these conversations happen. Like, that's why none of this is like, it's not medical. Like, this is a podcast. You know what I mean? Like, you're talking,
right.
And you see if people don't hear something and go, oh, I wonder if this is, something I should look into. A C-peptide test is one method that can help predict whether a person will respond well to GLP, right? So,
well, that's not what I wrote about.
That's not what you wrote about.
Yeah, I know C-peptide well. I would remember that.
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's not what you're talking about. But it is what we were just saying about the other guy. Like, if your beta cells still have the ability to like do some stuff, but it's just being held down by your body's inability to process the insulin and get the result, et cetera, that you want. Like, I can see why, I don't know, taking some of the, like, it's weird to talk about even because, like, are you increasing your insulin sensitivity or are you decreasing inflammation? Are both of those things happening? Like is it like a mix? And then it's just crazy when you hear the actual researcher talk about it and they go, I don't know, but it works. you're like, yeah. Okay.
I found the article that I wrote about. It's called Hungry Gut Gene Test Shows Who Will Benefit Most from Wegovy. So yeah, I guess they're grouping them based off of this gut test, and it is a gene test.
There's a genetic test available that's often referred to as Hungry Gut Gene Test, which identifies people who might respond better to GLP-1 receptor agonists like semaglutide for weight loss. The test analyzes genetic variants associated with how the gut and brain regulate hunger and satiation. In studies, individuals with the hungry gut obesity phenotype showed greater weight loss up to 19.5% compared to those without the phenotype. There you go.
Yep, there it is.
Just like that. Yeah. Anyway, my point is that this stuff's gonna help people, and it's gonna get to helping people with type 1. We were talking last night, like in a little private group, about how one of the big speed bumps for doctors about giving GLPs to type 1s is that in some people, and Dr. Blevins has come on the show and talked about this too, it can lead to DKA because their insulin needs go so low.
Right.
That they almost can't use enough insulin to ward off the DKA because they obviously still have type 1 diabetes.
Yep.
And their beta cells aren't helping enough to ward it off too. So they're looking at protocols that will then make the FDA comfortable with the prescription being written. And that protocol may be as simple as you get a ketone meter and you have to test a certain number of times a day to make sure you're not in DKA. And that might
get that good old Precision X.
But, yeah. But that literally might be the thing that helps it get written for type 1s.
Yeah. And it'll be a part of our CGMs, it sounds like, too, where alert us if we have ketones.
You think CGMs are going to tell people about ketones one day?
Oh, yeah. That's already kind of something that has been in the works. But it's almost like, is it too much information? You just kind of have to find that balance.
Yeah, overwhelming people with stuff. But anyway, I think that's interesting that, like, so what this means is, if that thing is right about the ketone meter, is that the FDA knows it helps people with type 1 diabetes, and they just need to be able to put it into the world in a way that's not going to cause anyone to have DKA. And once they can guard against that, then they'll be okay with it being written, which then means it'll be covered by insurance too.
Right.
Yeah, so that's exciting. Hey, wait. You trying to make a little Kathryn? What are you doing over there?
Yeah, we want to bring a little human into the world.
What happened? You started watching this kid and you got what they call the baby fever?
I think I've always had the baby fever.
Oh, are you like a little caregiver at heart?
Yeah, I just love, there's something so special about little ones. Just their sweet innocence and just adore them.
How long have you been trying?
I guess like 8 months now.
Really?
Yeah, so taking a lot longer than, what we had thought. But I think, I'm probably just been stressing too much about the whole thing. So,
do you have any PCOS symptoms?
No. And I've been testing and everything.
Okay.
So
stressing.
Yeah, it's probably all it is.
No kidding. They say sometimes you just like, I'm sure I've said this before, but I'm adopted. My parents adopted me after being told like they could not have kids. And keeping in mind, this was the late 60s, early 70s when they were being told that. And I'm not sure what the level of discourse was around this. They adopted me. And 5 years later, my mom got pregnant.
I keep hearing stories like that. It's so incredible.
Yeah.
And I told my husband, Kenny, I was like, maybe it's just like our calling that we're supposed to adopt and then we can have our kids. Because I mean, there's so many, like, people need to adopt. It has to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the doctor told my mom it was a fluke. She probably just relaxed enough for it to happen. I love the way they talk to women about their health. Literally, you don't have to worry about that. It's never going to happen again. And then 5 years later, she got pregnant again.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
So my brother is like, my youngest brother's, 10 years younger than me.
Yeah, that's huge.
So we should have seen my mom in her 60s dealing with my like teenage brother. She was like, oh, what the hell's going on here? Also, what was your husband's name? Kenny?
Yeah, Kenny.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny wants a baby, but he's also like, I can't believe this. The fun part is lasting so long. This is awesome. So
he's fine with it.
Yeah. I bet you haven't heard him complain yet.
No, not so much.
You're getting to the point where you're like, listen.
It's like, what's wrong with us?
Yeah, well, once it's on your calendar, now you're like, something's not working right. You're like, does it say here Thursday at 2, make baby? you know? So, well, I wish you a lot of luck. I know it can be incredibly frustrating for sure.
Yeah, but we're happy. We have a crazy dog that really keeps us on our toes. So
nice. Those dogs are good practice.
Yeah, it makes me feel like I was not at all prepared. We found our dog. She's a dumpster baby, and she has really humbled me.
Oh, wow. Somebody threw puppies in a dumpster?
Yes.
That happened. I guess that does happen. I don't know why I'm so surprised every time something horrible is brought to my attention, but oh, wow. How did you, so somebody found them, brought them to a shelter, and you came and got one?
No, we found her.
You found her?
Yeah, just heard her and...
Oh, my God. Kathryn, what are you doing near a dumpster? What, are you okay?
I was just walking.
Oh, okay. You're not living in an alley or something, right?
No, I'm not dumpster diving or anything crazy.
Gary's paying you, right? Yeah. So you and Kenny are walking down the street and hear a dog in a dumpster?
Yeah, we just had eaten at our favorite sushi place, and yep.
Oh, God. It wasn't the sushi place's dumpster, was it?
Yes, it was.
Oh, God. Did it make you wonder what you just ate in the sushi place?
No, luckily the dumpster did not smell. So
no, I don't mean that. I mean, anyway.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
You're like, uh-oh. So you took the puppy out. It was a puppy?
Yep.
What kind of dog? Is it a mutt or like?
Yeah, she's pitty, staffy, bulldog, and boxer.
Wow. And how does it humble you?
Well, I mean, she has eaten 2 couches, multiple dog beds, multiple shoes, purses, tampons.
Yeah, it's a low moment when your dog's running around the house with a tampon.
Yeah. Yep. And then has to go to the emergency vet because it's not freaking very bad.
Oh, my God. So just chewed through sofas?
Yes.
So obviously you can't wish that you didn't hear the dog in the dumpster because of the moral implications of it. But have there been moments when you thought like, oh God, dog's not for us, or just?
No, I love her so much. Okay. Like she has an Instagram. I'm totally just edit reels for this dog.
Did that flip you out when you realized the dog owned a phone? You're like, oh my God. Yeah. If the dog's smart enough to post on Instagram, why doesn't it not know not to eat the sofa? Yeah,
I know. Right. She's really smart. I mean, she's gone through like a lot of training, spent so much on that. And she knows how to be a good girl.
Oh, you're at this point now where you're looking at the dog going, I know you know not to do this. Why is this happening?
Yeah.
My wife thinks the dog looks at her differently sometimes. She's like, he knows. I'm like, I don't think he knows anything. I think his brain's the size of a walnut, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't know anything. Actually, Arden said on the podcast recently that she learned about consciousness and that dogs don't have it. Like the way dogs have consciousness is different than how like higher beings have it. Like it's something about the mirror test.
Interesting. Well, she makes these very like, I'm very sorry, Mom faces at me after she does something bad. So
I believe they say that that's you giving human feelings to an animal. It's called I can never like pronounce the word. Hold on a second. I sound like an idiot. Do you know about that?
I mean, it makes sense, but no, I don't.
Anthropomorphism. It's a term that refers to the tendency to ascribe human traits, behaviors, or intentions to non-human entities, including animals, objects, and even natural phenomenons. For example, saying, oh, look, the dog feels guilty because of its body language after doing something wrong. That's a form of anthropomorphism. So you are doing that, not the dog.
Well, I'm still going to believe that my dog is very sorry.
You just want the dog to be sorry.
Anthropomorphism, whatever
you just want the dog to be sorry. You're like, it must be regretful because that sofa cost $1,000.
Yeah, I know she's sorry.
Because if the dog's not regretful, you're going to take it back to the dumpster. And like, so you have to like tell yourself, it's not that you would do that. I'm assuming you would take it to a shelter and abandon it properly.
Yeah, I would never abandon
Please
her,
take care of your animals. Like, please don't take on responsibility for an animal. Like, that's why, Kathryn, how much do you listen to this podcast?
I wish more, but not a lot.
That's fine. So you don't know that I have a chameleon, or you do know this?
No, I don't know that. Okay.
So my family gets me a chameleon for Christmas. And my first thought was like, oh God, no. Like, I don't want to be responsible. Like, I have a strong sense of responsibility for things. Like, if you put me in charge of something, I'm going to feel that very deeply.
Yeah.
And I actually think that's helped me with the podcast. And you obviously have that with that dog, or you would have lost it outside, lost it in quotes. Do you think that helps you at your job?
I guess. I mean, I guess I could make the argument that it does.
Do you have less feeling that people feel guilty when they do something wrong than when the dog does it?
I think that my dog feels more guilty.
Okay. Let me ask you another question, because you've dealt with so many people.
Okay.
I've been asked this question. I've heard it said a lot of times. I don't actually think people don't care about their health. Like, you know how people, they'll say like, they don't take care of that, they don't care. Or I don't think that's true. I think everyone cares. I think that the tools they have to attack the problem are greatly varied between person to person. But I don't think there's any person who's like, I'm not going to bolus for my food today because I don't care. Like, I just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't.
I think they're overwhelmed by it, or, there's something else going on.
I genuinely believe that too. Like, I'm not saying you can't get into a situation with mental health where you physically and intellectually can't. I know that happens. I mean, every day-to-day person walking around who's not stricken by horrible depression or, mental illness or something like that. I don't think there's anyone out there who's just like, I don't care if I live or die. And even if they say that, I don't think that's necessarily true. I just think they're lost and they don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I think, they're just in such a dark place. This world, I mean, sometimes it's hard to find the good in it. So.
Yeah. Is it hard when, like, you're younger, right? So, like, let's think about you for a second. You said you overshared, so let's keep oversharing for a couple more minutes before I let you go, right? Yeah. So you're diagnosed at 12. That sucks. You've got a mom who has type 1 but is of no help to you. You feel pressure to help her because you realize she's not helping herself. That doesn't work out. You get this job that you've always wanted because, you've read this book and you're like, oh my God, I could work with this person who, taught me so much stuff. You go do that, you train yourself up, you become a certified diabetes education and care specialist. Does anyone hear it when I'm saying it? Why did you think this was a good idea? Certified diabetes care and
education specialist.
Yeah. See what you did? You made it bad. Okay. So you become that thing. And now you're helping people. Then you go off to, like, you help this little boy. You're trying to build your own life. You're having your own struggles, making a baby. Like, all this stuff's happening. And when I gave you the opportunity to say something, you said, like, the world's hard sometimes. Mm-hmm. So why are you not beat down by it?
It's a choice. And I mean, so to add to it, like, the hardest thing by far that totally overshadows, like, all of my other struggles in life is that my brother actually passed away.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think I'll ever go through something that would be as hard as that was, because he was my person in life.
Unexpectedly from an illness?
It was from drugs.
Okay.
So yeah, he was just 21, but we were really close in age and we really did everything together.
This is only 7 or 8 years ago. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Like, I just came to a point in my life where it's like, am I going to is this going to be where my life stops? Or am I going to choose to keep going and almost try to make him proud?
That could have happened. You could see that moment as an inflection point where you just kind of gave up too.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get past that feeling?
Around 2 years.
Wow. Would you consider yourself depressed during that time?
Oh, yeah.
Did you have to do anything like what did you do to manage that?
I tried talking to people. I really fell into a dark place with like alcohol for a while in my college days. But eventually and this is going to sound so like cliche, but really exercise is what ended up turning my life around. I found CrossFit and I got really into fitness, and it was exactly what I needed to heal me.
Well, I'm glad you found that.
Yeah.
See, now you should listen to more of the podcast, because eventually everyone says something like this after we've been talking for a while. And then later they'll say, I don't know why I told you that. But I appreciate you sharing that with me. That was really lovely to be that open. Did you ever consider because it feels like you went towards diabetes because of your mom and you, but did you ever think I could also help people with addiction or drug use issues? Like where does that lay in your mind?
Yeah, so I think that just hits too close to home.
You couldn't be around it like that.
I don't touch that so much, but when someone does lose a loved one, I think that I can definitely be a person that they feel safe confiding in.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I know it's hard. I'm sorry. You okay?
Oh, yeah. I'm good.
Okay. I was going to ask a different question. Now it feels like such a pivot. I'm sorry. After you make your little, not dumpster baby, but your actual own human baby, after that happens and the baby comes and is in the world, are you going to go right back to using a GLP again?
Well, I think that I will want to bring more babies into the world. So no, not right away.
You think you're going to do Irish twin it up? You're going to go twice real hard?
Maybe if
let's do it again. Oh my gosh.
No.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's crazy. We didn't talk much about or at all because it just sort of came up, but the amount of people that I hear come through here, when you said earlier, you can kind of see pathways, when I said oh, I don't know how many people I have to interview who are this happened to me. I interview a lot of people who also have a bipolar person in their family, or there's depression in their family. When you start thinking about depression or bipolar and inflammation and, how this stuff seems to go hand in hand through bloodlines, really, do you think that the depression you had was solely from the incident, or do you think that it's a thing you've had or have had since?
I mean, it's definitely, ongoing. It's a trauma that will always be a part of me now.
Yeah. But it started at your brother's passing, or do you think it was before that?
It's probably before that too.
Did you notice any alleviation on the GLP?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Okay.
No, it didn't. Not with that aspect.
Not that it should, just that you don't know this, but a lady came on recently who said that GLP medication alleviated a lot of her child's bipolar issues.
There's so many questions. And
yeah. No, I was just wondering if you noticed a lightening of your load in that time or not.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I personally suffer from depression. I think that, I do. I have medication. I've eventually found the right SSRI for me personally.
I'm glad you found something. Well, yeah. I think you have laid out perfectly why people might want to contact you. I think maybe Jenny's calendar is going to open up now. Because right now, if you try to get Jenny professionally, what's it take, 6 months, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jenny is hard schedule to get on.
Yeah. She's made a lot of fans. So you can go steal some of those people now. Would you share your email address at work?
Yeah, it's just my name. Actually, it's my old name. So it's K Gentile, my old last name, at integrateddiabetes.com.
Gentile.
You got it.
Okay. Well, if you're interested in Kathryn helping you with your diabetes, that is how you would reach out to her. And I know that's not why you came on, but I thought you did such a nice job and, laid out, a path of what you think and how, what kind of a person they might intersect when they reached out to you. So, I hope you don't mind me saying that.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Did we talk about everything you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely.
We did? That always surprises me.
I really didn't even have any plans. Like, I was just like, no, can't wait to talk to Scott. This is going to be super cool. So.
We spoke on the phone once before. Is that right?
Yeah, you helped me make friends at the Children with Diabetes conference.
Oh, that's right. They don't let me come there, but I still knew some people. By the way, that's not fair. I've never been invited. I'm sure it's fine. But
I think they have a different approach. I don't know. I've gone for the past 2 years now, and I love that conference. Oh my gosh, it is really fun.
Yeah, I swear to you, I have no ill will about it. And if, it's not a problem at all. Every year I'm inundated with, are you going to be at Friends for Life? Are you going to be with children? I know it's like on my calendar almost. Like, this is when it starts happening, when people ask me if I'm coming. And I'm always like, I would come if I was invited. I've not been invited. And that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just decided to volunteer this past year.
Nice.
And I hope that I get to volunteer forever, because it was...
Tell me what you took from it.
The connections that I got to see form, or the connections that were already formed just from so many years of attending. It really is just like, they're a family. If you're looking for a family feel, I don't think there's a better place to be.
Yeah. I just got back from an event where I was around a lot of people, and I had so many different interactions that were just heartwarming and stuff I won't forget anytime soon. From little kids who are just doing better, and since the last time you saw them, or watching people make friends. I had this really cool little conversation in this group of children where we didn't talk about diabetes management or anything like that, but there's I don't know, 50 kids in this room, and I just went around and just asked them questions like what's it feel like to be low, what's it feel like when you're higher, what do you struggle with? And then as you let them talk, from 5 years old to 15, when they started relating to me the questions they had about their health and their life, and you really started seeing the things that they were thinking about. Not that I didn't think kids were thinking about that stuff, but it's eye-opening to hear them articulate it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? To have a 9-year-old tell you, I don't understand what happens to me, and I wish I understood better. And, because I go to school and I try to take a test, and my blood sugar shoots up, and I don't feel well, and I don't know if I should bolus or not, all this other stuff. And it's just this young girl, you know what I mean? And, then to explain to her what adrenaline does to her, and then to watch all these little faces in the room go, oh my God. And then they can start relating it back to their own lives. Then 5 or 6 people put their hands up, and it's my blood sugar always goes up here. When I get to school in the morning, I said, oh, that used to happen to my daughter. And I said, and then does anybody's blood sugar drop really fast when the school day is over? And so many of them are like, how do you know that? You know what I mean? And just to see them feel oh, this is not I'm not crazy, and this isn't abnormal.
Yeah.
And that guy's saying that it might be because of this. One little girl, if anybody's listening, I would love to have her on the podcast. She came up to me afterwards with a notebook in her hand. And she had been taking notes the whole time we were talking, in the hour. And I said, is that a notebook? And she said, yeah. I said, what are you writing in it? And she goes, I was just writing down things you said.
Aww.
And I was like, okay. And she goes, would you sign it for me?
Oh,
and I was
goodness.
Only if you want me to cry. So I signed it, and I was like, thank you. She goes, thanks a lot. I have a lot to talk to my mom about. And then she just went away. So
it's so adorable.
Yeah, it was awesome. I love those things. Those groups are awesome. I'm glad you found them too. Okay. I'm going to let you go. You've been on a long time. I apologize for keeping you.
Yeah. Well, it was an absolute pleasure.
Oh, I'm glad you had a good time. Thank you. A huge thanks to Dexcom for being longtime sponsors of the Juicebox Podcast. Dexcom.com/Juicebox. Head over there now. Get started today. Omnipod 5 sponsored this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Learn more and get started today at omnipod.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. I'd like to thank AG1 for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast and remind you that with your first order, you're going to get a free welcome kit, 5 free travel packs, and a year's supply of vitamin D. That's at ag1.com/juicebox. Are you starting to see patterns, but you can't quite make sense of them? You're like, oh, if I bolus here, this happens, but I don't know what to do. Should I put in a little less, a little more? If you're starting to have those thoughts, if you're starting to think, this isn't going the way the doctor said it would, I think I see something here, but I can't be sure. Once you're having those thoughts, you're ready for the Diabetes Pro Tip series from the Juicebox Podcast. It begins at episode 1000. You can also find it at juiceboxpodcast.com up in the menu. And you can find a list in the private Facebook group. Just check right under the featured tab at the top. It'll show you lists of a ton of stuff, including the Pro Tip series, which runs from episode 1000 to 1025. Okay, well, here we are at the end of the episode. You're still with me? Thank you. I really do appreciate that. What else could you do for me? Why don't you tell a friend about the show or leave a 5-star review? Maybe you could make sure you're following or subscribed in your podcast app. Go to YouTube and follow me, or Instagram, TikTok. Oh gosh, here's one. Make sure you're following the podcast in the private Facebook group as well as the public Facebook page. You don't want to miss, please. Do you not know about the private group? You have to join the private group. As of this recording, it has 51,000 members in it. They're active, talking about diabetes. Whatever you need to know, there's a conversation happening in there right now. And I'm there all the time. Tag me. I'll say hi. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.